Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here today. I want to speak to the part of you that's ever loved someone deeply and lost yourself in the process. To those who stayed longer than they should have, hoping, waiting, believing they'd change, this message is for you. This isn't just about heartbreak. It's about rediscovering your worth, reclaiming your peace, and remembering who you are when someone else forgets. Because when someone loses you, it's not just the absence of your presence they feel. It's the void left by everything you gave that they took for granted. Let's talk about that. One of the hardest things about walking away from someone is that, for a long time, you wonder if it even made a difference. You start questioning yourself. Did they even care? Did they notice? Was your absence just a quiet exit in the background of their life, or did it shake something in them? But here's the truth that so many people miss. Your absence is never quiet. It's deafening. When you walk away from someone who took you for granted, it doesn't go unnoticed. At first, maybe they play it cool. They act unbothered, like losing you was just another chapter closing, no big deal. But give it time, that silence you left behind starts to echo, because you weren't just a person in their life. You were an experience. You were presence. You were consistency, care, energy, effort. And when that disappears, it leaves a hole. A space they can't fill with distractions, new faces, or even denial. It starts in subtle ways. They reach for their phone at a certain time out of habit, expecting a message that isn't there. They scroll through social media, trying to catch a glimpse of your life, wondering how you're doing, who you're with. They go to that place you both loved, and for a split second, they look around expecting to see you. That's when it hits them. You're really gone, and not just physically. You've emotionally detached. You stopped hoping, stopped reaching out, stopped investing. And that's when they start losing their mind. Because here's the thing, people don't always value presence until it becomes absence. They think they have time. They think you'll always be there, always forgiving, always giving one more chance. But you reached a point, didn't you? A point where you realized you were loving someone more than you were loving yourself. And when you left, it wasn't just about hurting or punishing them. It was about reclaiming your peace. Now they're sitting with the consequences. They're not just feeling the loss of a partner. They're feeling the loss of safety, of being understood, of having someone who showed up no matter what. That comfort they got used to, it's gone, and it's driving them mad. Because they're realizing that all the things they took for granted, the good morning messages, the way you listened, the way you cared without conditions, those things weren't guaranteed. They were privileges, and privileges, when abused, are taken away. This is where it gets hard for you, though. Because a part of you still wonders, should I go back? Should I give them another chance now that they finally seem to get it? But let me remind you of something. You didn't leave because they were confused. You left because you were clear, clear about your needs, clear about your value, clear about what you deserve, and that clarity, that's something you can't afford to trade for temporary remorse or emotional chaos disguised as love. The guilt they feel now, the panic, the sudden attempts to get their act together, those are their emotions to carry, not yours. Let them feel it. Let them sit in the silence they created, because that silence is teaching them something your words never could. They're learning now, in your absence, what they were too blind to see when you were standing right in front of them. That love is not infinite when it's not reciprocated. That even the most patient heart has its limits. They might reach out, they might send late night messages or try to remind you of the good times. But that's not love speaking, that's fear. that's loss, that's regret. Don't mistake their desperation for transformation. True change doesn't come from panic. It comes from pain followed by self-work, and that journey is theirs, not yours to supervise. You gave them something real, and now, without it, they're unraveling. But don't let that pull you back in. Because your worth was never dependent on how loudly someone mourned your exit. It was there all along in the love you gave, the effort you showed, and the boundaries you've now built. And now you stand in that power, quietly, confidently, because you don't need to prove anything. Your absence already said it all. You know, there's something most people don't realize until it's gone. You weren't just someone who loved him. You were a mirror. A mirror to the best version of him. You saw potential in him that even he couldn't see. You believed in the parts he doubted. You spoke to the man he could become, not just the one standing in front of you. And in a world that often gives up too quickly, you stayed. You encouraged, you nurtured, you waited for him to grow into what you knew he could be. That's not just love, that's vision. That's depth. That's an extraordinary kind of emotional generosity. And here's the thing, when someone gets used to having that kind of light around them, they don't always realize they're standing in it. It's like the sun, you don't think about it while it's shining, you just live in its warmth, but the moment it disappears, everything changes. The air feels colder, the days feel heavier, the world feels dimmer. He's not just missing you because he's lonely. He's missing you because, without you, he's now confronted with himself, without the reflection you used to provide. When you were there, he could look into your eyes and feel like more, like he mattered, like he was capable of things he'd forgotten. Like maybe he wasn't as lost as he thought, but now, without that mirror, he's seeing himself in a harsh light. And it's uncomfortable. You brought out the qualities in him he didn't know how to bring out on his own. You gave him space to grow, grace when he messed up, and reminders of what he could be if he tried. And while you were building him up, you were quietly setting aside parts of yourself, hoping, maybe, that once he stood tall, he'd turn around and lift you up too. But that moment never came, not in the way you needed. And now, as he sits in the aftermath of losing you, he's not just feeling the ache of separation. He's grappling with a new question. Asterisk, who am I without her? Asterisk, that question is haunting him. Because with you, he felt like a better man. He liked who he was becoming, not because he was pretending, but because your belief made him want to rise. And now, he's looking in the mirror, and he doesn't see that same man anymore. He sees the cracks. The immaturity, the emotional distance, the missed opportunities, and that's starting to break him down. You see, what you gave him wasn't surface level. You didn't flatter his ego. You challenged it. You didn't enable his flaws. You loved him in spite of them. You didn't just love the good parts, you stayed when it was hard. And that kind of love, the kind that demands nothing but gives everything, that shapes someone. Even if they don't realize it at the time, now he's beginning to understand that what you offered wasn't standard. It wasn't common. It wasn't replaceable. He may try to find someone else to fill the space you left, but what he's really looking for isn't just another person. It's the way you made him feel. That sense of being seen, believed in, accepted. That's what he's chasing. But here's the twist. That feeling didn't come from him. It came from you. It came from your heart, your strength, your emotional depth. And now that you're gone, that feeling left with you. And this part is important. Don't confuse his sadness now for a sudden realization of your worth. This pain he's in. It's not just about love lost. It's about identity shaken. You were a stabilizing force in his life, and now that foundation is cracked, that's not your burden to fix. He has to rebuild that on his own. You were never meant to be his source of self-worth. That's not love, that's codependence. You were there to love him, not to carry him. And now that he's realizing how much of himself was tied to you, it's on him to find the man you always saw. Not for you anymore, but for himself. You gave him a glimpse of his best self, but that version of him only survives with real effort, with real growth, with consistency and accountability, things he has to give himself now. You lit the path, but he has to walk it alone. And you no longer need to be the mirror. You are the light. It always hits later than you think it should. That's the frustrating part, isn't it? You spent so much time hoping he'd get it, hoping he'd see you, appreciate you, step up before it was too late. But he didn't. He thought you'd stay. He thought that no matter how far he pushed, no matter how distant or careless or inconsistent he was, you'd still be there the next day. Because that's what you always did. You showed up, you forgave, you tried again. He underestimated that quiet line inside you. The one that wasn't loud, wasn't dramatic, but was absolute. And when you finally hit it, when you finally reached that moment where your heart said, asterisk, enough asterisk, it wasn't with fireworks. It was with calm, with clarity, and that's what makes this even harder for him now, because it didn't end with a fight or a dramatic goodbye. You just stopped. You stopped pouring into someone who gave you so little back. You stopped hoping he'd wake up. You stopped waiting for change, and now he's waking up. Too late. See, people always assume they'll have time. Especially when they've gotten used to you always being there, always forgiving, always holding the relationship together with your effort. They start to believe that your patience is permanent, that your love is limitless, that your loyalty is unconditional, no matter how they treat it. But it isn't, because love doesn't survive in a one-sided story. It wilts in neglect. It suffocates when one person's presence is always expected, but never respected. Now that you're gone, the reality is crashing down on him, slowly at first. He's starting to notice how quiet things are, how dull, how flat, because you brought life into the room. You brought energy, softness, laughter, depth. And now that's missing. He's seeing it in the little things. In the morning when there's no message from you. At night when there's no one to debrief the day with. In the decisions he makes now alone, without your guidance, without your encouragement, without your belief in him. And the scariest part for him isn't just that you're gone. It's that he finally realizes asterisk. Why asterisk? He realizes you were waiting. You were giving him space to step up. You weren't asking for perfection. You were asking for presence, for effort, for consistency, and instead he gave you delay after delay, excuse after excuse. He thought you leaving was a threat, not a promise. And that's what's eating him alive now, because you weren't bluffing. You were building the courage to choose yourself. He's looking back now and seeing everything he missed, the times you needed him to listen and he brushed you off. The moments you reached out for connection and he chose distance. The times you were vulnerable, hoping he'd meet you in the middle and he stayed on the sidelines. All those times he thought you'd be okay, that you'd get over it. He's realizing now that every one of those moments was a brick in the wall you eventually built between you. And what's tormenting him now isn't just the loss. It's the awareness that he had every chance, that you didn't leave impulsively, that you stayed longer than you should have, that you gave more than you got. and that everything he's feeling now, this regret, this panic, this unraveling, it's all self-inflicted. But here's where it's important for you to hold steady. Just because he finally understands doesn't mean it changes anything. His regret doesn't erase your pain. His clarity doesn't undo the confusion you sat with for so long. Just because he's finally seeing you clearly doesn't mean you owe him your peace, your healing, your return. He had his chance, not once, not twice, but over and over, and you gave him grace each time, hoping it would be the last time you had to explain what you needed. But you don't have to explain anymore, because the most powerful message you could ever give was the one you already did, walking away. And now he's sitting in that space. He's losing his mind, not just because he lost you, but because he's finally realizing he had all of you, and still chose less. It's easy to fall into the trap of believing that your worth is something someone else gets to decide, especially when you've poured so much into a relationship, when you've loved someone deeply, when you've made space for them in your heart even when they weren't meeting you halfway. And then, when they don't show up for you, or when they leave, or worse, when they stay and treat you like you're optional, you start questioning yourself. You start wondering, was I not enough? But here's the truth you have to come back to over and over again. You didn't vanish just because someone failed to recognize it. Your worth was never in their hands. It was never tied to whether or not they loved you properly, or whether they saw all the things you brought into their life. That was their test, not yours. And if they failed to appreciate what you gave, that's a reflection of their awareness, not your value. You're not a product of someone else's ability to love. You're not less because someone didn't know how to meet your depth, your effort, your loyalty. We live in a world where people are often praised for being distant, for not caring too much, for being detached. So when you come into someone's life and offer something real, something consistent, vulnerable, genuine, they may not know what to do with it. They might not trust it, or worse, they might take advantage of it because they think you'll never leave. And when that person finally realizes what they had, it can mess with your head, because now, suddenly, they're emotional, they're expressive, they're trying, and you find yourself wondering if maybe, they get it. They see your worth. They want to show up. But here's what I want to tell you. Don't let their delayed recognition rewrite your story. Don't let their panic become the proof you were waiting for. Because if you weren't sure of your worth before they started falling apart, then their regret will only confuse you. It'll tempt you to equate their chaos with commitment, but regret is not a strategy. Desperation is not love. Someone losing their mind over losing you is not the same as someone who was willing to do the work to keep you. That's why your self-worth has to stand on something deeper. It has to come from knowing in your core that you are already whole, that your love is not a favor, that your standards are not too much, that the way you show up for people isn't a weakness, it's a strength. And when someone can't meet that, it doesn't mean you have to lower yourself to feel chosen. It means you walk away knowing they missed out, not because you weren't enough, but because they weren't ready to rise. And here's the powerful shift. When you stop trying to earn validation from someone who couldn't even appreciate your presence, you free yourself. You start showing up differently. You stop waiting for someone to finally make you feel like you matter, because you already know that you do. That doesn't make you bitter. It doesn't make you guarded. It just makes you clear. They're going to look back and realize what they lost. That's inevitable. You don't give someone that kind of love, that kind of patience, that kind of presence, and it not leave an imprint. But that's not your victory. Your victory is that you learned to love without abandoning yourself, that you gave your all without compromising your worth. And when it wasn't returned, you didn't beg, you let go, and now they're the ones sitting in the consequence of their inaction, their avoidance, their emotional laziness. They're the ones unraveling because they're finally seeing the truth that your love wasn't just rare, it was irreplaceable, and it was real, and they let it slip through their hands thinking there would be another chance, another version of you, another time you'd forgive. But this time there isn't, and what you have now is something far more valuable than their recognition. You have your dignity. You have your peace. You have your power back, because you finally realized you never needed them to see your worth to know it was there. There's something deeply unsettling for a person who once had your heart and then lost it, to realize that you're not broken without them, that you're not chasing, that you're not unraveling like they expected you would. See, they thought your world revolved around them. And to be fair, for a while, maybe it did. Maybe your plans, your emotional energy, your late nights, your sacrifices, they all revolved around trying to make it work, around trying to hold something together that was slowly slipping through your fingers. But now you've stepped away, not in anger, not to prove a point, but because you finally saw the truth. You couldn't keep sacrificing your own well-being to fix someone else's lack of effort. You walked and you started doing something powerful. You started healing, quietly, gradually, without theatrics. And that, more than anything, is what's driving them mad. They assumed you'd collapse without them, that you'd fall apart, that maybe you'd beg, that maybe you'd keep one foot in the door just in case they ever decided to come back around. But you didn't. You stayed out. You stayed grounded. And now you're slowly becoming someone they no longer have access to. That's the part they never expected. People underestimate the strength it takes to walk away and not look back, to go through the waves of pain, to feel the withdrawal of what used to be your emotional comfort zone, and still not return to it just because it's familiar. They underestimate the quiet power of rebuilding your life on your terms. And they definitely underestimate what it looks like when someone starts choosing themselves after years of choosing someone else. You're out there showing up for your life now. You're having hard days, but you're not staying stuck in them. You're learning to sit with discomfort without trying to numb it through old patterns. You're setting boundaries that maybe you once apologized for. You're learning to be present for yourself in a way no one ever taught you. And all of that is what makes them panic, not because they're afraid for you, but because they're losing the control they thought they had. They're watching you become someone they no longer recognize, someone stronger, someone clearer, someone who's no longer waiting to be picked. And the truth is, it's hard for them to process that because it forces them to confront a version of you they never believed you'd step into. They thought they broke you, or at least they thought they left you with just enough emotional damage to keep you tethered to them. But they didn't. They woke something up in you. They pushed you so far that you finally stopped looking at them and started looking inward. That's the danger for them now. You've stopped hoping. That's what really changes the game. You're not hoping they come back. You're not hoping they'll grow. You're not building your days around whether or not they reach out. You're not keeping the seat next to you warm. And the moment you stopped hoping was the moment you stopped needing them. And that scares them, because now the story is no longer about them. It's about you, your growth, your healing, your life moving forward. And the more you step into that, the more you become untouchable, not in a distant or bitter way, but in a way that says, asterisk, I finally know who I am without needing you to confirm it. Asterisk, so if they're spinning now, if they're reaching out, if they're suddenly trying to make noise in your life again, understand this. It's not necessarily love. It's fear, it's ego, it's the realization that they lost something that they assumed would always be theirs. And that loss, it's not just about you, it's about what you represented: stability, nurturing, a place to rest emotionally. And now that it's gone, they're waking up to what they never had the courage to appreciate. But it's too late, because you're not who you were when they left, and that's the part they can't undo. There's a moment in every healing journey where the shift happens. It's subtle at first, maybe even invisible to the people around you, but inside you feel it. That moment when the sadness doesn't feel as heavy, when your thoughts aren't consumed by them anymore, when the story starts to sound different in your head, not because you're rewriting the past, but because you're finally seeing it clearly. You start to realize that this pain, this grief, this heartbreak you've been carrying, it's not a sign of weakness. It's proof of how deeply you cared, how much you showed up, how much you were willing to risk emotionally. And for a while, that love felt like a burden, because you gave it to someone who didn't hold it with care, someone who treated it like it would always be there, no matter what. But even now, even after everything, your ability to love that way, that's not something to regret, that's something to honor. What you're beginning to feel now is the rise of self-respect. It doesn't come with fireworks, it comes with peace, with clarity, with the ability to sit with your own presence and actually feel safe there. You're not fighting for crumbs anymore. You're not shrinking yourself to be chosen. You're no longer walking on eggshells in your own life. That quiet confidence you feel now, that's self, worth taking root. And once it does, everything changes. They're feeling the distance now, but not the physical kind. It's emotional. It's energetic. It's the distance that grows when someone who once gave everything has finally turned that energy inward. You're not cruel, you're not bitter, but you've grown, and there's no going back. When they look at you now, they see someone they can't reach in the same way. And it's not because you're punishing them, it's because you're no longer in the same emotional place. You've done the work. You've sat in the silence, you've cried the tears, you've answered the hard questions. And somewhere along the way, you stopped asking why they didn't choose you, and started asking why you kept choosing someone who couldn't meet you where you were. That question changes everything, because it brings the power back. It reminds you that you were never powerless. You were never unlovable, you were never too much. You were just asking the wrong person to see you. You were waiting for someone to recognize a value you hadn't fully claimed for yourself yet, but now you are. And because of that, the bar has risen, not out of spite, but out of self-awareness. You're no longer chasing connection just to fill a void. You're no longer tolerating half love because you're afraid of being alone. You're standing on your own 2 feet now. That doesn't mean you're done healing. This isn't about perfection. It's about progression, about choosing yourself every day, even on the days when it's still hard. Even when the past calls to you, even when the idea of what could have been tries to seduce you back into something that never truly fed your soul. Let them feel the loss. Let them wrestle with the reality of what they let go. That's not cruelty, it's consequence. Because this isn't about revenge, it's about release, about no longer carrying the emotional weight for someone who didn't carry it with you. You've cried your tears, you've lost sleep, you've questioned your worth, but now You're stepping into a chapter where you no longer need them to understand your value in order for it to exist. This new version of you, it's not hardened, it's not closed off, it's wise, it's discerning. It knows that love should never require self-abandonment, that choosing someone should never mean losing yourself. You're not afraid of love now. You're just unwilling to settle for anything less than mutual respect, effort, and emotional maturity. And maybe they'll never stop thinking about you. Maybe they'll always wonder what life would have looked like if they'd met you with the same depth you gave so freely. But that's not your story anymore. You've outgrown that chapter. You're no longer living in the shadow of what was. You're walking in the light of what's next, and that is your freedom.